Boker Tov. So we've now been into some detail of the whole enactment of Rabbeinu Gershom. And let me now explain why this is important and relevant still to know about nowadays. So let's step back for a moment. From the Torah's perspective, a man is able to divorce his wife without her consent. That means if one delivers a get, a bill of divorce, to his wife's property, to his wife's hand, then whether she likes it or not, she will be halachically divorced. However, again, this is something maybe we'll pick up in the future. Rabbeinu Gershom made another harem, nothing to do with not marrying two wives, but a different one, not to divorce a woman against her will. And indeed, this is the practice nowadays, both amongst the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim, that it's not correct, and we don't do it. We do not divorce a woman. A Beit Din will not facilitate the get for a woman without her consent. Now, a major issue when it comes to divorce is A, when a male refuses to give the get, and that's a major issue to be discussed another time. And B, which you may think to yourself, why would this happen? But unfortunately, I can tell you that it's quite common. And indeed, the statistics in Israel, at least, where there have been statistics on this, is that it's almost equal. In that a woman refuses to receive her get from her husband. So the husband wants to give the get, he wants a divorce, he wants to move on, but the wife is refusing to receive it. And that causes an issue because, like we've said, nowadays we do not divorce, a Beit Din will not facilitate the get of a woman against her will, without her consent. And I can tell you from my experience that it happens. It happens that a woman doesn't want to receive a get, and then the husband is in an issue because he wants to move on. They've been civilly divorced. They've gone through the legal mechanisms and they've been civilly divorced. And he now wants to go and marry someone else. He wants to start dating someone else. But halachically and from the perspective of Torah, the person is still married to his wife and she doesn't receive the get. So what does he do? So Ashkenazim have an issue with this because of Rabbeinu Gershom, and they will only allow for, in such a circumstance I've described, if you go through what we discussed yesterday, the whole Heter Me'arabanim, the whole 100 rabbis and the 3 different cities and the 3 different locations, and everyone to agree that based on these extenuating circumstances, it's permissible for this man to marry a second wife. But that's a very long process and it takes time and it's an issue. But as we have explained, the Shulchan Aruch never ruled and never accepted the Rabbeinu Gershom's takana, A, in Sfaradi countries, and B, even in Ashkenazi countries. We discussed in the past, there were those who said that, and the Shulchan Aruch rules this, that the time frame of the harem has now passed. Yes, in practice, we still say that you don't marry 2 wives, but in a situation in which a male a husband wants to divorce his wife, and legally they are divorced, and there's no reason for the get not to proceed, but the wife is kicking her feet and not wanting to receive the get. So in such a case, Sfaradim will be able to rely on the Ikar Hadin, that the man, if he's exhausted all possibilities of trying to give the get, and the Beit Din have exhausted all options of trying to facilitate the get, and still it's not possible, the woman simply doesn't want to receive it, then in practice it would be possible, provided they are legally divorced, of course, because Beit Din cannot sanction bigamy, something which is illegal in secular law. Provided they are divorced, then the Beit Din will allow this person to marry a second wife, although they're not living together and their relationship broke down a long time ago and they are civilly divorced. But in the eyes of halakha, this person is still married to this woman who doesn't want to receive the get. But the Sfaradim, we will not require Me'arabbani, we will not require this whole long process. Because based on the two things we said, firstly on the geography and secondly on the time frame. And therefore, in such a circumstance, it would be possible for a male to um, uh, uh, to to receive permission from the Bedin when the Bedin have exhausted all options to be able to go and marry a second wife. Having said that, what the Bedin will do is require him to write a get and deposit and make a shaliach to deliver the get, and then the get will be deposited in the Bedin. And if the wife, a month later, a year later, 5 years later, decides, yes, now I'm ready to receive the get, then the agent will then just give the get. So another requirement we make is that the get is ready. So not that we're going to have to, once he's already married and he's settled with his wife, second wife, and he's living with her, etc., and then we come back to him 5 years later and say, now your first wife brings you the get. No. What we'll say is, if you want to marry her, permission will be granted to do so. But first, make sure you've done everything on your part. So you'll instruct for the get to be written, you will write the get, you will appoint an agent to deliver the get when your wife is ready to receive it, and that get will then sit in the files of the Bedin until the woman wants to receive it. And in essence, it's for her benefit because it allows her to be able to move on. But sometimes it happens that woman doesn't want to receive it. And so we see that even this Rabbeinu Gershom, which was 1,000 years ago, and all the details of it, it still has practical ramifications nowadays, certainly for Ashkenazim and even for Sfaradim. But for the Sfaradim, it's easier to override this in extenuating circumstances like we have described.